What's going on, beautiful people? Every time you've seen my face lately, it means we're installing Windows 11 on unsupported hardware, and today is no different. I have a new way of installing Windows 11 on machines that may not have TPM 2.0 or Secure Boot or some of the other requirements, but this allows us to bypass the normal installer. Now, I will tell you, it involves using tools that are official Microsoft tools, and you do have to type commands in the command line. So if you're old school and used to use DOS, this is kind of similar to that. Or if you just like to know different ways of getting around things in case one of the ways you know doesn't work, then you can try this. Stick around for this video. Now, I do want to address something. A lot of people have accused me of hating on Rufus. I have nothing against Rufus, but it is a third-party tool. Some people just like to stick with first-party tools. So with that out of the way, let's get into it now. Now, before we go through this using DISM and the media creation tool and all that to install Windows 11 with no TPM 2.0, I want to give credit where credit's due. And a user named Prady Axiom made a GitHub gist that pointed me to the fact that you can use DISM to bypass the Windows 11 installation requirements. But I'm going to deviate from what he's doing a little bit because I'm not downloading an ISO file directly and I'm not using Rufus. We are actually going to build the installation media using Microsoft's official tool and then go from there. But I want to thank him for pointing me in the direction to let me know that this is even a possibility. So I'm going to go over to Google and we're just going to search for download Windows 11 media creation tool. Choose this first option because the second one points you to the first option anyway. I'm going to scroll down and we'll click on under the create Windows 11 installation media, click download now, and I'm going to plop this in downloads. Okay, and there it is, media creation tool. If you lose it, remember you can always click right up here and it'll drop down this little menu again. We have to say yes, and we're going to give it permission. And it'll run the tool. Now I will say up front, unlike last video where I showed you how to do this using registry hacks, this time I'm not using a super fast flash drive because a few people thought it was pretty funny that I kept pointing out I had a fast drive. You know who you are. But I'm going to use a bog standard verbatim drive that came from Walmart. So let's go ahead and accept. I've already plugged that flash drive in. It should be drive G, I think. And I'm going to show you just for prosperity's sake, if you uncheck this box with Windows 11, you're not going to get anything different for the edition. There's actually 8 or 9 editions on this installation media. I'll show you all that when we get into DISM. So now I'm just going to go to next. And we're going to use a flash drive. And this one here is G, untitled. Okay, now we're going to download Windows 11. I am on Starlink, and I like Starlink. It's great because where I'm currently recording this from, it was the only alternative we have. But Starlink is a lot slower than fiber, so I'm going to pause this here, and I'll pick it back up whenever it starts writing it to the drive. Okay, the download is just about done. Then it's going to verify the download. That won't take that long. And then you'll see it starts writing to the flash drive. And we've made it to the last part. This actually takes a little while as well, so I'm going to pause and I'll be back when it's done. Alright, it's just about done creating the media. Your PC might pop up whenever it gets to a certain point and inform you a drive has been inserted. That's okay. Then we'll hit finish. Now it's going to clean up the files that it copied to the drive off of your hard drive. Now you can eject the flash drive, and let's take it over to our unsupported hardware. Here I am with the lovely 6700K. This came out about 10 years ago, and it's definitely not supported by Windows 11. It's the same platform that I used when I showed you how to do an install using only a Microsoft created installation media with registry hacks to get past the requirements. This is a little bit more manual, what I'm about to show you. It uses DISM, and it's kind of low level. It allows you to copy over images, which is basically what the installer does when you use the actual regular old Microsoft installer for Windows. However, DISM allows us to skip the requirements checks for TPM 2.0, secure boot, the CPU, the amount of RAM, and it'll just copy over the image. We will have to do the OOBE bypass NRO hack, and I have the Ethernet unplugged because for the bypass NRO hack we might as well do that so we don't forget. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn on the power supply and use my handy dandy screwdriver to touch some pins, and I'll probably have trouble finding the right ones. But basically with your front panel header, it's not that big of a deal if you touch multiple of these pins before you find the two proper ones. Remember, it's motherboard specific, so you're going to have to consult your motherboard manual to make absolutely sure which pins you need to touch. But if you touch the wrong ones and you don't touch the top of the motherboard and knock something loose, just touching the wrong pins won't hurt anything. So here we go. It's booting up, and it's complaining because the CMOS battery is dead, and I'm not going to go hunt another one because this machine really doesn't matter to me. It's just unsupported and a good test platform. So I'm going to do F1 to run setup. Okay, and every motherboard is going to look a little different. This is kind of the standard Asus type. So I'm going to go into advanced mode and boot. And I'm going to do what's called a boot override to make sure to boot off of this flash drive that we just created with the media creation tool. So we'll just click on this. I'm going to use the UEFI version. I think this will work without UEFI, but I'm going to go ahead and use it because the vast majority of machines in the last 15 years have had UEFI support, and it's better because it supports large disks and probably some other stuff that I've forgotten that UEFI was important for. So we'll wait for it to boot off of the flash drive. And I can tell because it's going a lot slower than if this was booting off of that NVMe. Oops, I didn't even need to hit next. I'm going to do Shift F10. Just like we did whenever we made sure to install Windows 11 with only Microsoft tools before with the registry hacks. I'm going to go ahead into this, and we're going to go to Properties. This should let me make the font bigger so it'll be easier to see. Okay, I don't want to go too big, but I think we've got plenty of room if I make it that big, and we'll just make it bigger. Okay, I'm happy with that. So we're going to use something called Diskpart. It stands for disk partitioning. If any of you remember FDisk, this is kind of the modern equivalent of that. I'm going to start out by doing list disk 0, or list disk, sorry. And you'll see that I have two disks attached. and they're given an identifier, disk 0. I know this is the NVMe that's installed in the motherboard because of the size, and this is the size of that flash drive right here. So and notice that the NVMe drive is GPT, which is what I want. The way that Diskpart works is you give it some kind of verb, and then you give it an object identifier, which is either disk, partition, or volume, and we're only going to fool with disk and partition. Then you give it an identifier when you're wanting to do something. So select is how we pick which thing we want to work on. Select disk 0. Disk 0 is now selected. And I always make sure very carefully to make sure that I have selected the right thing. So disk 0 is that NVMe drive. What we're about to do will basically wipe all the partitions. Now there is a command called clean, which will automatically wipe all the partitions, but I'm not going to use that. I want to show you how you can get rid of certain partitions if you need to. Okay, so now I'm going to do list partition. This is going to show me the partitions that are on disk 0 that I selected. Okay, and now we need to get rid of these 4 partitions, and I am going to do it manually rather than use the clean command. So I'm going to say select partition 1, and we just say delete partition. And it knows which one we're going to delete because it's what we have selected. Oh, we have to force it, so let me go look at this here. Help, delete, partition. This will give me the help commands. We need to do override whenever we give that command. So I'm going to push up a couple times so I don't have to retype all that, and we'll say override. I always forget if it's override or force or whatever. So I'll do delete partition override, and that deleted it, and we can go list partition to see what partitions we have, and you'll notice that partition 1 is gone. So I'm going to now select partition 2, delete partition override. Okay, just for prosperity, we'll list partition again, and I'm just going to keep going till both of these others are deleted. Select partition 3, delete partition override. And I just realized that I told you guys how to push up to reissue a command. And list partition, select partition 4, delete. Well, let me show you. Let's do up to make sure. Delete partition override. Okay, so I tell you guys how to do stuff, and then I'm like a bad follower of my own advice. So that's how this goes sometimes. Okay, so now if we do list partition, there are no partitions to show. And if I do list disk, see, I can see the disk that I have selected, disk 0 selected. That's what the little star is to make sure that that's the one that we're looking at. So now we're going to basically do what the Windows 11 installer would do for us, but we're going to do this manually. Okay, and this is old school, like doing fdisk. So the first thing I got to do is make a partition for the EFI, and it's a special kind of partition. And since we've got disk 0 selected already, I'm going to do create EFI size equals 500, and that means 500 megabytes. And I think that's actually a lot bigger than most EFI partitions need to be, but it's perfectly okay if we make it like that. Oh, I gotta do create partition. There we go. I forgot to give it the object type. There we go. We've made a partition. And I can say list partition so we can see it. Okay, partition 1, system. Okay, when you make an EFI partition, it is a system type. Okay, so now I'm going to format that partition. So we don't have to select it because it's the only partition and we just made it. See, it's already selected with the little star there. If you want to be 100% sure, we can say select partition 1. Okay, partition 1 is now selected. So, but you really don't have to. I just thought I would show you that. So we'll do format, and then we got to tell it the file system EFI is expected to be installed on a FAT32 top. So FS is for file system equals FAT32. And then we finish that up with quick. Otherwise, it's going to do a slow format. And we don't need that. And that was very fast because there really wasn't anything to do. And since it was quick. Now, this part right here actually is a good thing to know in case you need to fix your boot menu or your if your Windows boot manager gets screwed up. You can do this part and assign the EFI partition a drive letter. And this is pretty cool. This will allow you to access it if you get access denied. I'll make a video about that, just doing that at some point. But I'm going to say assign letter A. Okay, and that's going to give the A drive or the A drive letter to the EFI. We need that at the end of these steps in order to copy over the boot files. Okay, and when you give it a drive letter, it is not protected and you can do whatever you wanted. Now we're going to go ahead and create a new partition. Create partition primary. Okay, and by default, if you format without giving it a file system type, actually, let's make sure that we've selected the new partition. I'm almost 100% positive when you create a new partition that it will automatically be selected, but I'm going to make 100% sure. Yeah, it automatically selected our new primary partition, which happens to be 931 gigabytes. And we need to format it, so I'll do format quick. And I don't think I mentioned it, but I know that partition 2 is selected because of the star. I mentioned it earlier, but this is just to help you kind of know how this type of thing works. Okay, and we're going to give it a drive letter of C. Assign letter C. And it's very important you give it letter C. Wait a minute. Not free to be assigned. Okay, apparently this drive letter is being used by something already. Okay. Let me do list volume. Yeah, so the USB drive here has been assigned letter C already. So let me go to help assign. Okay, and let's see how we unassign. I don't remember. Okay, let's go help. And select disk 1 list partition. Okay, so that is our flash drive we've booted off of. List volume. Select volume 3. Okay, and I'll say assign letter T. Alright, I think that freed up letter C. I don't think you can have the same drive letter on multiple volumes. So I'll say list volume. Yeah. So now it's freed it up. Okay, and sorry about that little snafu. I did not realize I would have to do that. But as often these things go, you have to figure out what to do on the fly. Contrary to what my wife may tell you, I am not perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to say select disk 0. Just to make sure I'm on the right disk, we'll list the partitions. Oops. There we go. There's partition 2. Select partition 2. And I'm going to say assign letter C. And it should be free to use. Yay! So now, just for giggles, I'll do list partition again. Or actually list volume. Because that'll show us that volume 0 has letter C, and it is that 931 gig partition. Okay, so now let's see, we gave it a drive letter, and it's good to go at this point for the next part. Okay, so now we can exit Diskpart. So we just do exit. Okay, and we are in sources. Now the X drive, the sources, is basically a virtual mapping that the Windows installer does. And if I look in here, you know, this is a little bit different than what I am looking for here in a minute, because the install.esd that I'll be using doesn't appear in here. Okay, but if I go to D, like so, oh no. Okay, so apparently gonna have to go back into Diskpart. Okay, I thought this was already mapped, so I'll do list volume, and it's not. Okay, oh, that's gonna be T in this case. Sorry, I don't know why I thought D. So we're gonna exit, and I'll do T, colon, hit enter. And if you use a different letter for that, that's fine. But now I'll do dir, okay? And then we got to go CD sources. And now I'll do dir again. And the difference between X and then doing it this way, accessing it this way with that drive letter, is there should be an install.esd in here that we need. Where did you go? There it is. Install.esd. And notice that it is kind of big. It's 4 gigs. Okay, and that's because this is the Windows image that we are going to use to force the Windows 11 install. We're just going to copy it onto the hard drive without going through an installer. So I need to look in this image to verify something called an index of the edition of Windows that I want to copy over. So to do that, we're going to use dism space, and then I'll do / get image. I know I'll get this wrong. Image info. Okay, and you got to do the -get -image info. And then we have to tell it the image file we're going to use. Image file. And then you do a colon. And then we do T colon / sources / install.esd. And this will work with an ESD file or a WIM file. You can convert back and forth between them. But with my method, using the standard Windows 11 installation media we created, you don't have to convert anything. Okay, and what this is going to do is show us all the different versions of Windows 11 that is contained inside of this ESD. And I am not 100% sure how it works such that it knows what files to copy over for different versions or whatever. But what I'm worried about is you have these indexes. So index 1 is Windows 11 Home, index 2 is Windows 11 Home In, and so forth. And I'm looking for Windows 11 Pro, which is right here. So that's index 6. So keep that in mind. The next part, we're going to use index 6. Okay, so this is the magic part where the image gets copied from this flash drive, from this ESD file, to your newly created C partition that we made manually a second ago. So now I'm going to do DISM, and then we're going to use something called apply -image, and then / image file. There's no hyphen, colon, and we're going to do T : /sources / install .esd. And then we have to tell it the index that we want. So index : the number 6, because remember Windows 11 Pro was index 6. And then we're going to do /, and this is the magic. Where do we want it to be copied to? Apply dir, the directory to apply it to, and I'm going to do C : just like so. And when I hit enter, if I typed all that right, and believe me, I've screwed this up a few times, it should start a copy process. Oh yeah, it would have threw an error immediately had I messed that up. And I'm pretty sure it's going to give me a progress bar. I did a practice run of this a few days ago, but I'm an old man and forgetful at this point. So there we go. It's copying over. And this part actually seems to go a little bit faster than if the official Windows 11 installer does it. But I think it's skipping a lot of checks. That may or may not be a good thing. I don't know. But I do know that this is going to let me put Windows 11 on this machine, even though it is horribly not supported with TPM, with Secure Boot, or with even the CPU is not supported. But that ain't going to stop us. Now, I get a lot of questions as to why in the world anybody would even want to install Windows 11 and how terrible it is and all that good happy stuff. The thing is, people have all kinds of reasons. Some people want to just have the newest version of Windows, and they think, well, my system can technically run it if I do a few things, and I just want the newest version, so I get the security patches. Some people see it as being more secure because it's getting more patches. That's debatable, considering that you are technically defeating a lot of the security features built into Windows 11 because you're bypassing TPM 2.0. And some people just are scared to death with the idea that their Windows 10 is not going to be updated at all anymore. But whatever people have reasons, or whatever reasons people have, let's just leave them alone and let them install Windows 11 and be happy and blissful. A lot of people tell me in the comments, oh, just install Linux and be done with it. Well, the thing is, with Linux, if I want to run Photoshop, or anybody wants to run Photoshop, or certain games or whatever, you have to fool with trying to do it in emulation, and well, not emulation, now it's virtualization, but it's a pain in the butt, and a lot of average people don't want to fool with having to jump through all the Linux hoops when they have used Windows for so long, and it's just more familiar to them. But there's room in the people for running any operating system. I use a Mac sometimes. I probably use Windows the most, except I use Linux on my servers, and I'm pretty familiar with the command line for server kind of things. I don't use it on my desktop for my desktop operating system because I don't want to. I could, and I have in the past for development, but I like Windows 10 or Windows 11 with the Linux subsystem for Windows. That's good enough for a lot of the dev stuff that I do. Or I just use the Mac that is basically, you know, some flavor of old school Unix in some ways. But anyway, that's enough of the soapbox. That was pretty quick to copy over, and this is for all the haters, especially on that slow flash drive. So now, the last step, we have to copy over the boot manager, the Windows boot manager, using something called BCD boot. And this is how you can repair the your boot manager if it gets screwed up, even if you're not doing this DISM copy over thing. And then we're going to tell it where do we want to put it. Okay, Windows, and then we're going to do /S, and that means copy the system files. Where from, we're going to do A:, and then we're going to say F, and I think that's force all, and I hope I typed that right. Yep, so that went really fast. If everything goes right, should be able to reboot, and everything should be peachy keen. I'm going to go ahead and yank this flash drive out. Okay, some people are probably cringing, but it doesn't seem to really read the flash drive after you get booted in. Okay, so I'm just going to give it an old Control-Delete. Actually, that ain't going to work. I may have to flip the power off and back on. Oh, nope, I'm going to do Exit. And when I do back, and when I close this, it should reboot. There we go. Bada bing, bada boom, quickie. Okay. I don't think the CMOS will complain because we haven't lost power or anything. And the boot manager should be in place to put us into what's technically the Windows install. Yep. So now it's booting off that NVMe with the freshly copied over Windows 11 Pro. And you're going to see some of the same first boot kind of messages that you would normally see. Starting services and all that good happy stuff. And then it should say detecting hardware, installing drivers, devices. I don't know. You think I would have this totally memorized, but I install Windows 10, Windows 11 on so many different machines sporadically that I'm old and I forget. So there's nothing really to talk about until we get to the first screen, at which point we will do the bypass NRO trick for the out-of-box experience, OOBE as they say. And we might boot once or twice more, I'm not really sure. Just a moment. Okay. I'm cool with that. I'm cool. It's cool, buddy. Okay, now, make sure that you have unplugged your Ethernet. I know I mentioned that, but it will not work otherwise. Let's do Shift F10. And just so it makes it clear, I'll go in and change the properties on this again. And I want it to be nice and big for everybody so that it's easier to see than some of my other screen recordings. And this is where you type OOBE / bypass NRO. And it reboots again. And I personally wish Microsoft would not make us jump through any hoops to be able to install Windows 11 without making a Microsoft account. But they do, so we will react to it accordingly. I look for them to eventually do away with this skip, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to click yes, I'm in the United States, and that is the right keyboard. I do not want to add another layout, so I'll skip that. Ethernet's not connected, which is by design, and I'll say I don't have any internet. And it doesn't even pester you to make a Microsoft account anymore. So I'll just say accept, and I'll just put in my name here, and a really secure password. You really should use a secure password. It's better than not having one. And as is usual, I'm just going to pick the first security question and answer tacos. Don't worry, I don't use that on my actual machines. So I just do it because I think it's kind of funny. Okay, and I turn all this off. You can actually use some programs to really turn off a lot of this stuff and make it track you even less. I don't really worry about it in my own life. Microsoft, knowing a little bit of the shopping I do or whatever, doesn't bother me. I really don't think they go to that extent, but let's be honest, I don't know. I wish that they would just abandon all that and make an operating system for a few $100s, and I don't even care if it costs money to upgrade between editions and whatever. You know, Apple started all that with Mac OS and then iOS, giving you updates perpetually without paying anything until they quit supporting the hardware. If Microsoft just took out all of the spying kind of stuff and pushing suggested apps on people and just made it so that we can install our operating system and use it as a backbone for all the wonderful things we do with our computers, just like they used to, I would be fine with that. I would gladly fork over my money, and they would support their operating systems longer because there would be a financial incentive to do so. So many people complain and wouldn't spend the money, but I don't know. I just kind of miss the old school way. I've turned into that old man on the computer lawn screaming about my operating system and get your hands off of this, get your hands off of that. Okay, so now we're in. I'm going to plug up the Ethernet, and I'm going to have to set my keyboard on the little OBS laptop. And we'll plug this up. By the way, I don't particularly recommend that anybody set a motherboard and power supply up like this and just on a table, but I did make sure there's nothing metal around or whatever. And I'm a big boy, I don't care necessarily. And so what I'm going to do now, because this is a question that I got, is will this allow me to install Windows updates? So I'll just use the search box and type Windows updates in it and click on check for updates. It has not yet because we had no internet, or we lied to it and told it. So I'm going to say check for updates. And by the way, while it's doing that, I'll just point out that this mouse that I'm using, I got in 2000 when Microsoft released its first affordable optical mouse, and I paid $35 for it. My college roommate at the time bought his a week or two before me, and he paid $50 for it, and then they went on sale all of a sudden, and he was so mad, but he had thrown his receipt in the garbage. So now it's going to install a bunch of updates. Okay, and I'm going to stop commentating at this point because I don't really need to. And I'm just going to click install all. And I'll have to reboot a bunch of times before this actually happens. But I just want to prove to you that these updates indeed will work, even though we have bypassed all of the measures. Oh, one thing I wanted to do is I had some people question whether I was really on a 6700K. So I'll just right click down here on my start menu and go to System. And you can see right out of the gate that here it is, a 6700K. Very solid CPU. I still think for basic tasks it's perfectly fine. A lot of older people just need their machines so they can check their email, look around on Facebook and such. And the 6700K would do just fine for that. Okay, you're not going to win any speed tests, but the average computer for the last quite some time has been much faster than most people need. And that's great. That's great. We live in that time. I do miss when things where, you know, whenever a new CPU came out, the jump in performance was just so great and so exciting. But hey, no big deal. All right, so I'm just gonna come back when all the updates are done installing, and we'll wrap this up. Okay, it's almost done, I think. I stepped away and got something to drink. Just kind of chilling out. I will say you can definitely tell that this older platform is a little slower than a newer machine, but like I said, if you're not trying to win any speed contests and don't really care, what does it matter? Okay, so there's that. And oops, let's go to Windows Update. Pardon the voice, I don't really know where that came from. It's been a long day. Let's check for updates again and see what we got. There might be a couple more. Nope. It's all good. And oh, the time zone is wrong because I'm actually in the Eastern time. It's 7 o'clock, but I ain't worried about that. So let's do virus threats and security and quick scan. Okay, and here is proof that it installed the latest virus files, what it thinks of as 332, so 28 minutes ago or so. And there you have it. Another way to install Windows 11 using only Microsoft tools without using Rufus. And I have nothing against Rufus. Calm down, everybody. But this is using only Microsoft tools. It's a little more involved than the registry hacks. But you never know when this may work and the registry hacks don't. If this video was helpful, you thought it was interesting, it worked for you when no other method did, please subscribe, give me a like. Leave me a comment telling me where you're from. That's always really interesting to hear from everybody. And you guys have a great day. Catch you in the next one.